just got that weird Zoom voice thing. It says this meeting is being recorded. That must be like a consent privacy sort of thing, eh?
I'm thinking they got sued.
Yeah.
Like,
People recording without consent, and then they're
yep.
like, okay, we got to say it. But then this creepy sort of like Brave New World voice comes in. She's like, this meeting is being recorded, and you're
You
just
remember
like,
those
oh,
old school GPSs and you could choose the voice you wanted?
yeah,
Like, I should give them those options like Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck,
that'd be
be
great. Yeah,
way more
choose
interesting.
your Zoom lady. So Laura Tolhoek is the owner of Essential HR. And Laura, first of all, thank you for doing this. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me the invite.
For sure. We've done a couple of things on your platform, which was the Essential HR Facebook channel. You brought me in to talk about how to use public speaking skills for business owners. And I
Yeah.
think, as I recall, we talked about, using your speaking skills and your storytelling skills to get your customers and your employees really excited about your brand's story and employee facing brand
Yeah.
stuff. And so it was really interesting for me to talk about that. And now, I sort of ironically, timing wise, I'm now becoming really interested in HR because my company is growing. So I'm going from being a co-founding, double act with my co-founder to having a lot more employees and having coaches who are going to go and do the work that we do and sending them out into the world. So yeah, first of all, how do you look at HR and why did you get interested in it in the first place? Like, how does one become an HR expert?
How does one decide to go into this field?
Yeah.
So I always had a passion for business. I grew up in a home. My father was a small business owner. He now has a team of about 50.
Mm,
So I watched the tenacity and I watched that really the drive that it took to be a small business owner. And I thought, I definitely want to be in business. That's where, I think I can really make a difference. And so then you jump into university thinking business, and you don't realize there's like 18,000 different areas because they give you like what, four in university: finance, HR, marketing, or general.
right.
I thought,
Yeah.
well, I don't
Productive.
really like numbers. Finance has never been my passion. I like people. Let's do people, and that's kind of, for lack of a better term, that's really kind of how it went. But so I
Do
didn't.
you think,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, I was just going to say, do you think that in general, HR is kind of like the people with people skills? That's where they get drawn to?
I think initially that, yeah, people, go into it because they want to help.
Mm,
And one of the things that's really tough about HR is we are fairly gray and we're fairly rule driven
mm,
in this type of field. So finding your way to be beneficial to both the business and to provide, the support for team members. I love being
right.
that intermediary
Yeah. Right.
because really you're trying to help people see both sides of it.
Yes.
And so it's funny because when you have young HR people who are, coming into the industry and you're like, why do you want to be in HR? And they're like, oh, I love people. And you're like, you won't.
Yeah. Or they might not love
Yeah,
you.
you're
Yeah.
like,
If you're the person in the middle.
because
Yeah.
one thing about HR is we love, I'll be honest, we kind of love the drama. Like that's where HR gets
Mm.
fun. And so when I talk to our small business owners, they're like, this is crazy. I'm sorry. It's not always like this. I'm like, it's okay. This is the part we really like.
Right. Yeah.
When somebody's saying that, somebody else's locker, their drink spilt and ruined their purse. And now, they want the company to pay for their new purse and you're trying to navigate ridiculous situations like that. Like that's kind of what makes
Hmm.
HR a little fun.
Interesting. Yeah. And so, sorry, I cut you off when you were sort of in the middle of your story. So you
Mhm.
choose HR, and then what was that university or college
Yeah,
experience
so
like?
university, undergrad in business, and then postgraduate in college, and then straight into corporate.
Mm,
And I got the amazing opportunity to be involved in some really big names in the restaurant, retail, and hospitality world when it came to my corporate HR experience. Did that for, I want to say, about maybe 10 to 12 years. And
And
yeah.
and what is the entry level job like look like that? So you get out of your master's and then you're into the corporate world. So what would your first job have been?
Data entry,
Ah,
data
right.
entry,
Like
payroll,
every entry level
like
job. Yeah.
filing,
Fill in the spreadsheet.
yeah,
Right.
doing about 1,000 new hire orientations for a hospitality complex in 1 year.
Right.
It's really, yeah, it's not the fun stuff to begin. And especially for someone like me, who loves the big picture, who loves the strategy side, who loves,
Yeah.
setting the tone and the mission. Data entry is not my forte. Like the
Yeah.
details, God bless the people who love the details. And I have some great people on my team
Yeah.
who are so detail oriented. And I'm like, thank you for catching these things that, are
Yeah.
not my
Yeah.
forte to see.
I'm like you as well. I'm so bad with details. I'm so bad at data entry. And then I find myself now doing like easily 60 to 70% of my work these days is like going through emails, finding numbers, um, scheduling things, especially now that I'm becoming more of a manager and more of a boss and less of a practitioner, let's say. I find myself doing so much detail work, and it's crazy because it's like I feel like a bear, on ice skates or something, whatever the analogy is. It's not my forte at all. So yeah, how did you survive those years when you was it just painful, or did you?
Well, I think you don't, when you're younger, you don't know the difference of what you're actually passionate about and what you're really good at.
Right.
But it's funny because as a business owner, when I hire team members, I look for people who have the strengths that I don't have.
Hmm.
So if someone says to me, "Oh, I love payroll administration," or "Oh, I love writing like massive policy manuals," I'm like, "We are in," because
Great.
really,
Yeah,
I don't
because I
need
don't.
somebody who's like me. I don't need somebody who just wants to like start the first 25% of the project, get it going, get the passion driven. I need someone who's fantastic at the last 25%.
Right.
So that's where it kind of, when you start being a business owner, you start being able to really find those people who complement you and thereby make the business stronger.
Right. And so what was it like? So you're as the owner of Essential HR, that puts you at the head of an HR company. And
Mhm.
am I right in saying that Essential HR is geared towards small businesses?
Yeah. So we primarily look at businesses. We consider small businesses 5 to 50. That's
Okay.
our target market. But we've actually recently kind of broadened that because we had so many people who were scaling solopreneurs.
Mm.
And as a solopreneur, you literally have every hat: marketing, finance, administration,
Yeah,
sales.
I'm lucky to have a partner, but it's just
Yeah.
two of us, so it's like yeah, we definitely know what that's like.
And then when you're at the point of, oh my gosh, this is too much to handle, I need to
Hmm.
hire somebody, you're like, wait, I have to put on the HR hat. I don't even know where to start. So we've
Right.
actually started reaching out and helping solopreneurs with
Hmm.
that first hire. We call it taking the hiring leap,
Oh, that's
and
awesome. Yeah.
get them everything they need to really be confident in that first hire.
So that's a really interesting question, because I think a lot of the people who, if there is anyone out there who's listening, we're not just talking into a void. They're going to be solopreneurs, or they'll be early stage
Mhm.
entrepreneurs, early stage founders with probably less than 5 people, or if not,
Yeah.
certainly in the lower end of that window. So when what would your advice be? Like, when does a solopreneur know when they have to start hiring?
Oh
Because
gosh,
yeah,
yeah.
that's the temptation, is to do everything yourself and save the money. So
Mhm.
when do you know, or what would your advice as an expert be on, okay, now it's time to take that first leap?
So, two things. The first is, in my opinion, you kind of have to do it before it's a crisis.
Right.
You kind of have to
Yeah.
take that hiring leap before you actually feel ready.
Yeah.
Because as anybody knows in small business, you never actually feel ready for the next thing. You're
Right.
never fully prepared. And if
Sure.
you were waiting till you were fully prepared for everything, you probably wouldn't have even started the business. The second thing I would say for me personally, when I know I need to hire in our team, is I stop following up on sales. So we become so busy that I'm like, if we get another sale, I don't know where we're going to fit it in or at what
Right.
time frame. So I notice it in myself that it's time to hire when I stop like making
Because
sure that sales process.
you're at max
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah, or I
You
get
can't make
nervous
any more
about
money.
how we're going to fulfill it.
Right.
And that was all the way through every single hire I made. That was the trigger. That was like, all right, time to bring on some more capacity.
Right.
And I think that's another thing when you look at it and you say, if I had somebody else doing A, B, and C, could
Hmm.
we be making more money? And
Right.
for us, where we are fulfillment in services, if it's only my 40 or 60 or 80 hours, however many hours a person went into this thinking they wanted to work, if it's only my 40 hours, I max out.
Yeah.
You can only do so much. So when we bring on team members, all of a sudden we have more capacity to make more money.
And so as the sort of with the HR, I would imagine that you have an idea of like where the hires are going to be the most effective at making you money. Do you find that there's a very predictable, let's say, chronology of when you take on new different people? Like, is it usually sales and marketing is the first hire? Is it administration? Is it like accounting? Is it, what do you find is usually when the solopreneurs or the early stage small businesses, who do they usually need? What kind of
Yeah.
help?
So for subcontracting, often marketing or finance, like bookkeeping services, is something
Right.
that people like to subcontract out to get it off their shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Because like marketing is, I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole on itself if it's not your forte.
Good Lord. Yeah.
and,
I despise marketing.
and then when we bring in actual employees to help us within our business, I think it's going back to looking at like, what do you need? Do you need fulfillment, or are there things on your plate that really are not your passion? Like, there's no point in me bringing on somebody to do, something that I love,
Yeah.
and me struggle through the things that I'm not good at or hate.
Yeah.
So if you're, a sales driven company and you love the sales process, why would you bring on somebody to do sales for you?
Right. Yeah.
You
That
need to
makes a lot
bring
of sense.
on the thing that you're not passionate about, the thing that you keep putting off. That's the opportunity that you have.
So even if it's maybe like the sales drives money, but you know that you'll be more fulfilled and be more happy if you
Mhm.
do that task. And then even if something like accounting is not a driver of revenue, but you know that it just, because that's what it is for me.
Yep.
I hate accounting and I hate marketing. And so those are two of the people that we've
Yeah.
subcontracted out recently, because I'm like, why am I bashing my head over the wall to do this? I love delivering my product and my
Yep.
service, which is coaching. I love content creation, at least for social media. So I enjoy doing that thing for myself. I don't want to shop that out necessarily too much.
Yeah.
But and I like sales. I like talking to people and getting to know what they need. So yeah, that's really interesting. And what do you find is the most difficult thing for small business owners in the hiring process? What can they just not figure out usually?
You know what? There's a lot of, let's be honest. You're passionate about what you do. You're an expert in that area, and now you're required to understand HR, hiring, training,
Yeah.
development, all of that sort of thing. And as small business owners, we think it's our responsibility. Like, we
Yeah.
have to know it. We have to know it well. We need to know Google Analytics. We need to, and so one of the things that we start falling into is that analysis paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the what do I need? Who do I need to be bringing on? How much do I need to pay them? Where do I post this job? What do I post in a job description or job posting? Do I need an offer? All these things start running through our brain, and so we just stop.
And that analysis paralysis means like I'm spending so much time thinking about the thing, I'm not actually doing it.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know the answers. You can only Google so much before you've spent a whole day and trying to figure out what a job description should look like and what should
Right.
be included in it.
Yeah.
And then, if you get past that point, you're like, all right, so if I hire somebody, how am I going to train them? My day
Mm-hmm.
is already so filled. How am I going to find the time to get this training done? And what do I need to train them on? And what's the training plan? And all of those things just get us spinning without going anywhere.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not what we've been trained to do, and it's maybe not even what we're passionate about.
Yeah. And like so many things, it's a skill set all on its own that you never even think of as a skill set until you are forced to sit down and
Yeah.
do it. And you're like, oh, there's a word for this. That's for me too, because I never thought of what HR was because I had no time and experience in the corporate world. When
Yeah.
I heard HR, I just went, oh, that sounds like a stupid, bullshit business term that I don't know what it really
Yep.
means, and I'm not going to think about it.
Wooden doors and lots of paperwork.
Yeah, right, exactly. Or like, complaints. Like that's always what I thought of HR.
Yeah.
HR was about people complaining about their colleagues, and and so
Well,
it's
it is
about like,
that too.
yes, but like that's usually what you hear,
Yeah.
like in a joke about like, oh, I'm gonna have to talk to HR about that,
Yeah.
joke that you made, that inappropriate thing or whatever. But now that I'm a small business owner who is currently expanding, I have a huge question for you around
Yeah.
training, because one of the biggest things that I have experienced, and I know so many, especially service-based entrepreneurs have, is they're like, okay, I want to grow, and I know in order for me to grow, I have to teach what I do to someone else. How the hell do you do that? That's such a crazy difficult question to answer, and I'm going through it right now. And so you mentioned a training plan, and what do I need to train them on? So how would you help somebody like me who is like, okay, I have this method called the OutLoud method that I've worked on with my partner, and it's it has a loose curriculum, and it's how we take our clients through. But a lot of what I do is just stuck in here, and it's based on my past experiences. It's based on the books that I read, even like what I'm reading that week. How do you help me extract that and put it on paper, or put it on a slide deck, or put it into documents to people who are going to be doing what I'm doing and representing my brand?
So whether you have 2 employees or 200 employees, one of the biggest problems is the stuff in here.
Yeah.
We think everybody knows. We
Yeah.
think they know what we expect of them in their role. We think they know what we consider success in their role.
Right.
Because we've thought about it so much, we assume
Yeah.
that it's just magically somehow gotten from our brain to there. We think they know how we think of them in their
Yeah.
performance. We think
Right.
they know that we think they're doing a fantastic job, or we think they're doing a crappy job. We
Mhm.
think they know that. They have no clue.
Right.
So when it comes to this training plan, so I'll go 2 ways. So the first is job descriptions. So before you ever get to training plan, we're going to get that job description built. And that job
Right.
description is the cornerstone of everything we are going to do in terms of the HR function. So the job description, I mean, it has key responsibilities. Yes, it has those skills, it has the education or certifications or experience requirement. But if you have a great job description built, it also has key performance indicators. So what does success look like in this role?
Right.
And my favorite example is if you're hiring somebody for social media, and you expect them to do the copy, the graphics, the posting, the content calendar, and they can show you some great examples of what they've done in the past. And you're like, yes, this is amazing. Thank you for this. But you don't explain that your expectation is that they can pump out 20 posts in a week, and they can pump out 3 really great ones, but only 3. You have a mismatch of expectations, and
Right.
that's a key performance indicator. So
Uh-huh.
if you have that strong job description, that's going to turn into your job posting. And your
Right.
job posting is not your job description. Your job posting is your dating profile for this role. And it's
Right.
all about attracting people to this posting or to this role. And then that job description, it turns into your interview guide. So what questions are you going to ask? You're going to ask directly from what you built, what this role is all about, the skills, the responsibilities, the
Right.
experience. And then that job description turns into your training plan.
Hmm.
You're going to put out information, put together a plan based off of what you said this job has to do.
Right.
So that's the first step. The second step, to make it easy for scaling solopreneurs, small businesses, even 15 to 20, 25 people, there's some great programs, great apps out there that can really help you. Now, if you're like me and you like to say, well, I need you to do A, B, and C. A kind of looks like that. You'll figure out B and C. That's how I operate with my
Yeah.
team.
Right.
And one of the questions we ask when we're hiring, thanks to one of my team members who built the interview guide, says, how do you deal with really not a lot of all the information and figuring it out at the end? And I said, well, you're asking that because of me? She's like, maybe. I'm like, it's okay. I'm very well aware that that's how I operate.
Yeah, that's definitely my style as well. And I can, and I guess, yeah, you want to look for people who will be okay with that, and not people who need like super, clear by the book instructions.
Well, and the opposite of that, of you and I, who don't do well with training individuals on details, is people who are really good with the details, and they've
Yeah.
gotten a bad rap called micromanagers.
Right.
But there's also a large group of individuals out there who need step-by-step instructions in order to get something done.
Yeah. So
They
they
need
would appreciate a so-called micromanager. Yeah.
100%. So what I would suggest for someone like you or I, if I'm running, I need somebody to learn a payroll operation, Loom video. This is how I do it.
Yeah. Loom
And
video
then,
is the best
yeah,
for anybody who hasn't used it out there. Like, you just take a video of you and you can show your screen and you just walk them through it and you
yeah.
email it to them. I always suggest Loom. It's like I'm being paid by them, which I'm not, but it's like, it's such an easy to use thing. And I think in general, that brings us to one of the things that you and I talked about last time, which is, how do you communicate as the business owner to your team in a way that gets them motivated and makes them do the thing? Because I spend a lot of time working with business owners on customer facing stories and customer facing messaging or investor facing stuff. So how do you convince people to buy your product or invest in your product? But it's also, how can you convince people who are working for you to like want to do a really good job, to know why it's important to do a really good job, and then, as you say, what a really good job looks like. And video is such a really powerful tool for that, because you can literally say it in real time and say, hey, do this first, then this thing, then that, and it's easy to follow along with. And then, rather than having to like read through a complicated email, and you make it conversational and you make it nice. So video is a great tool in that sense.
Well, and for the employer, as for the manager, it's so much easier than writing out the
Yeah.
instructions.
Yeah.
And then
It's so
my
annoying.
my favorite thing is, hey, can you turn this Loom video into a Word document for the people who learn better step by step that way?
Yeah.
And
Well,
you
you know what,
just
you
get
can, then
somebody
you
to write it
use,
out for you,
or
and
then you use
surprise.
otter.ai, which is another one of my favorite
Yeah.
tools. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so many cool ways now that we can actually do better
Yeah.
at training. So when you when you go back to the idea of, that micromanager versus the not great trainer, and in this sense, when you have new individuals, it is better to be a bit more micromanagey,
Hmm.
but we also have to know ourselves. So I know I'm not great at the details in terms of teaching somebody something else. So I also know who on my team is. Um, and it's the same way when you have somebody coming on board in a larger environment. Maybe you have 8 people on your team. And maybe you're not, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, maybe you're not the extrovert on your team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe, it takes a lot of energy for you to really put yourself out there and to be that welcoming face. And you're great at what you do. You're passionate. People love you. They rally around you. But that extrovert quality might not be there.
Mm.
Who on your team is that person? Who on your team can welcome your new person, make them feel comfortable, help them understand the culture? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be you.
That's
And we
really interesting. Yeah. What?
so
So
maybe
oh
your
no,
office
sorry, please.
administrator, maybe your
Right.
office administrator is that person. Like, Ben, he's just fantastic. Everybody loves Ben. You know what, Ben? This is my part of onboarding. The day they come, I want to have an hour with them to teach them this and this and this. But Ben, I need you to be their buddy.
Right. That's really interesting. Because, yeah, I was thinking about the idea of, the more you delegate as the business owner, the less you feel like you have control and you have your finger on the pulse of everything. It's really hard. I have to say, it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, is delegate what I feel like is my baby. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm sure, it's not unlike, although probably way lower stakes, but it's not unlike handing your child off for the first time to a babysitter or
Yeah.
something, some small
You
fraction
know,
of that.
my child was okay. Giving my puppy to the puppy sitter was way harder.
Was the puppy not into the dog sitter?
Well, I was just like, it's just my puppy. Just be careful. I've already given away 2 kids to daycare, no
Yeah, you're
problem.
like,
But the
that'll be fine.
puppy.
I know. Yeah. I felt very similar the first time we left our dog for a weekend away.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's really, something you take care of, something you feed, something you make sure you walk, and something you spend all this time thinking
Yeah.
about. The relationship between myself and my puppy, my dog, and the relationship between myself and my business is certainly, there's
Yeah.
tons of metaphors and analogies there. It's like how much time you spend thinking about it, how important it is to you, how
Yeah.
big a role it plays in your life, how it manages your time, how you've sort of watched it grow and helped it grow. That emotional investment is very similar. And then now you have to say, okay, this idea whatever, you're now representing it. So you have to go and do this and represent the brand and represent my company. And I just have to like let it happen and wait for you to do this. And I can't do it the way I want to, and I have to give it up. So yeah, what advice do you have for passing off your work and delegating, and especially for me, who's a practitioner,
Yeah.
how can I give that up with more confidence and knowing that it's going to be okay, or at least,
So one of the things that you didn't tie in there is we often tie our self-worth into the success of our business. Now, that may be a positive or a negative, but we define what we're doing and how people like us by the success of our business.
Totally.
And one of the things I found is that my relationship when I was a solopreneur, my relationship with my clients was really tight, and I knew what was going on in their businesses, and they could call me and I knew who Sally was, I knew who Jacob was, and as the business grew, I hired incredibly competent HR business consultants who stepped in and was able to do not only what I was doing, but do things better. Like they don't do it necessarily how I do it, but sometimes I look up like, oh, that's fantastic. I never would have thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And so it starts becoming this relationship where you're like, okay, put more trust in them. I put more trust in them because I've hired them because they're brilliant individuals. But what that made me feel like is I don't have my finger on the pulse of, what was 5 or 7 clients now turns into 25 clients. And I can't just jump on the phone and say, how's Sally and Ben? Because I don't know who Sally and Ben are.
Yeah.
And that started making me have a weird relationship with the business because I started having to redefine myself differently. So as opposed to being the person that they called, and I loved being helpful. I love picking up my cell phone and dealing with a crazy situation.
Yeah.
I'm no longer that person for all of the clients. They all have their own. And so I had to start redefining who I was in the business.
Do you see, so that's really interesting because I feel like I'm going through the same process right now. So you say you're the owner of the company now, and is that how you see yourself, and what do you see your role as right now in the company? What are you actually doing day to day, and how do you see yourself and define yourself now?
Yeah. So I started the company. The whole reason I started it was because I wanted flexible, not full-time employment.
Yeah. Right.
And the corporation I worked for at the time said, no, we don't have that available. And so I was like, well, I know a lot of people. I answer a lot of phone calls just in my everyday from friends and family saying, hey, what do we do about this?
Yeah.
I could find myself part-time, flexible employment. And then that grew because surprise, like this was a good idea. There's a lot of small companies who wanted fractional HR support or just the confidence at the end of the phone line to answer questions. And so it came to the point where, I needed to hire. And at first I hid behind the fact that it wasn't going to be a full-time job. I didn't work full-time. I didn't want to work full-time. I was starting to work full-time because of the amount of clients, but I didn't want to be at that place. That wasn't why I started the company. And so I started hiding behind, well, it is part-time. What are you looking for? And then something switched in me. And I thought, if I wanted to have flexible part-time opportunities in this career that I loved, there's got to be other people like me who also are looking for these flexible. So I stopped hiding behind it. And I started being like, this is who we are. We offer flexible support to our clients. We offer a flexible work environment to our team.
Right.
And it started being what drove the story of our business and what drove the story to our clients.
Right. And so, so then at a certain, when did it feel like you were no longer the, let's say, product delivery person? And when did it feel like, when did it start to shift at what number of employees?
COVID. It shifted.
COVID. Okay.
Because I had a grip, like, oh, this thing is just going to take 5 minutes. I'll just do it. Oh, this thing's just going to take 10 minutes. It's going to do it. And my to-do list was just as long as before I hired my first individual, but I wouldn't give anything up because it's just 5 minutes. It's just 10 minutes.
Right.
And so COVID hit and I had 2 small kids at home and I could not keep up anymore with the pace.
Right.
And so those 5 or 10 minute things, I just started giving them up, and surprise, lo and behold, it got done and probably got done better than how I would have done it even. And so it was really out of requirement, and I was forced to give up the small things that made me way too micromanagey
Mm.
with, not giving up, not delegating. Um, and the funny thing that I found with delegating is once you start, it's really addicting. You're like, oh, perfect. I can get them to do that. I can get them to do this.
Yeah.
So my role switched more from the fulfillment side of things to just the oversight. So the marketing, the sales, making sure the proposals are going out, coming in, talking to new clients. A lot of times, I still stay on those first initial calls
Hmm.
to get things started on the right foot. And then once the relationship has now been established between our consultants and the client, they start taking on the work. But it's just, I stay on that first part, that visionary part, to
Yeah.
really start driving that relationship. And then on the back end of it, it's also great because now we have a team. So we all look at what's being created. Someone needs a policy. We'll all take a look, be like, oh yeah, this is good. Hey, we need to actually add this. So
Hmm.
it's like three brains in
Right.
one for
Yeah.
our clients.
That's fantastic. And I really like that idea. And it's something I think I'm going to start to adopt is like being on that first call with my new coaches. So if I have a new coach and I'm
Yeah.
passing them off to a new client because I don't have the capacity, then I say, listen, you'll get the first call with me and we'll talk about
Yeah.
strategy and I'll take you through the method and say, like, this is where we're starting, this is where we want to get you to. But then, this is the coach who's going to work with you, week by week. I really, really like that.
You know what the
Um,
hard part is, Will, is when they
mhm.
start liking the other people more than you.
Honestly, I feel like I definitely have an ego about my work, but I feel like I would love that because I'm like, I'm
Yep.
so the past, since we've hired people, I've been like, great, I'll finally have more time. And then in the past 4 months since I started the hiring process, it seems like almost, in a cartoonish, ironic twist of fate, every single referral or whatever person that's come in is being like, I only want to work with you or your co-founder. And it's just
Yeah.
been like, I'm like, we have these other great coaches. They're way cheaper, like it's working with us is expensive because we're trying to make it like that so that we can incentivize people to work with our coaches. And then they're like, yeah, doesn't matter. I'll pay it and we'll work with you.
Yeah.
And be like, Jesus, okay, well, if you'll pay the money, then we'll do it. And it's so tricky, but once they start being okay with that, I feel like it'll be a huge sigh of relief because it's tough being the only person that your customers want to work with, because as much of an ego boost as it is, it doesn't allow you to take time off and to grow into
Well,
the
and on
future.
the flip side of that, like when I first started the business, I wanted it to look like a team. God forbid anybody thought it was just me.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Like, I didn't want my picture on the website. I wanted it to look like we're this like, corporate,
Well-oiled, yeah.
yeah, skyline view of the office. And then as the team grew, I was like, oh gosh, no, let's scale that back. Let's show them that we are hometown feel.
Right.
And all the messaging went from us, Essential HR, we, like that I wanted. And now I'm not afraid to say I, or because we do have a team. It's legit
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
opposed
right.
to 3 or 4 years ago.
And that's also a really interesting question, and I'm interested in your kind of perspective on this because as a public speaking coach, I deal a lot with messaging and marketing. And so when I talk to a client, I say, you should be the face of your company. Even if
Mhm.
there's other people, there should be one singular face that can kind of show up, even if you are a team, even if you don't, even if people aren't even going to get access to you, just to understand
Yeah.
what your story is, where you came from, what you believe in, and all that kind of stuff. So how do you feel about that? If you're dealing with somebody who's now taking on more people, how do you tell them about their marketing, like like I versus we kind of?
Yeah, I can't say that marketing is my forte, but I can
Hmm.
say for us, I know
Yeah.
for me personally, and this is where you would come in as a great coach, I still struggle with being the face of the organization.
Yeah.
Now, whereas before I was we because I wanted to look like a team. Now I'm
Uh-huh.
we because I still want everybody else to realize like we have a great team and it's
Yes.
not just me.
Yeah.
Um, it's our systems, it's our brain power together, and it's the way that we deal with our clients, it's the feeling. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think
Yeah.
at
I'm
the end of the
interested.
day, when you start seeing the team, when you
Yeah.
start like talking about it as a team, there's going to be an automatic assumption that if you hire a marketing social media company and it's a company, the person at the top of the company, they're not doing your graphics.
Yeah.
They might be looking over the copy, but they're certainly not writing your copy.
Totally.
And this is kind of the similar idea, that coaching, that, that service provider type of work.
Yes, that's right. And I'm really interested in that because more and more, and especially younger people, are going to be doing these kind of entrepreneurial Gen
Mhm.
Z, millennial, Gen Y jobs that they're talking about, which is like graphic design, copywriting, stuff that services the kind of tech and software industry.
Yeah.
And that's going to be more and more common. And what I also think will be more and more common from listening to sort of people talk about this who know way more than I do is that more and more people will be entrepreneurs and sort of freelancers and doing the working for themselves through all these different, freelance hiring platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, or,
Yeah.
all these different ways you can find people. So really, given that the market will be more and more saturated with these kind of service providers, I start to think that your story and your philosophy and your face and voice even become your unique differentiator, and it becomes what
Absolutely.
makes you unique. So yeah, I'm interested in that with you personally. Is like, do you ever feel scared to put yourself out there? Do you ever feel like it's somehow, yeah, like how do you feel about that being the
Yeah.
face of your company?
Um, I am petrified of putting myself out there,
Hmm.
mostly because my entire life I've been a very opinionated individual. And I've also been, I like to think, a very witty individual, and also fairly cynical. So you
Yeah.
throw that all together, and the offhand comments that I make to friends and family, which I would never do, in the business, I'm
Right.
afraid might come out sometime when I don't want them to. So
Sure.
I'm always afraid, a four-letter word will slip out in a podcast, and so I'm always nervous about putting myself out there because, let's be honest, HR isn't, it's not as flashy, and you expect a certain amount of decorum
Right.
with the individual who is going to be doing your harassment
You
investigations.
can't be cursing, yeah, in the middle of a inappropriate language seminar, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's mixing that with who I actually am.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
frankly, though I'll write a policy that this says there's no alcohol at company events, I love a Corona. And
Yeah.
how do we really balance
Right.
those two? Like, I want to be the HR person that you do want to go for a beer with at the end of the day, not
Yeah.
the one that you don't invite, because that is who I am.
Yeah. Right.
So it's kind of trying to find that balance
Hmm.
of who I am, who the brand represents,
Yeah.
because all of our team members, I mean, as far as HR people go, we're pretty cool. Even though
Well,
we call
yeah. I
ourselves
mean,
HR geeks.
but that's the sense I get from you, and that's the kind of thing where I'm like, if I'm hiring an HR, I want to work with Laura because she's cool and she's fun and she's personable. And so when I get that as somebody kind of in your orbit,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the kind of thing that would be really strong in the messaging. And I'm very interested in this idea of not being able to be oneself in customer team, or investor facing, in
Yeah.
business facing opportunities. And I believe in general that the people who are successfully able to be as much of themselves as
Mhm.
possible when they're doing their work are the ones who become very successful, certainly within their niches, even if they have a whole lot of people who don't like the
Yeah.
way they do things.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I
And
don't want to attract the opposite. If
no.
I rarely wear a suit. I don't own that many heels. And
Yeah.
if somebody expects me in a suit and heels, that might not be the environment that we're going to really thrive in.
Sure. Yeah. Because that's it. It's like, we talk about this all the time, niching and finding your tribe and all this stuff about like not trying to appeal to too many people
Yeah.
and just trying to find it as who you want to talk to and be yourself in front of them. But then there's still this sense of, what if I let myself show too much?
Yeah.
What happens if I'm too much me?
What if
You
they
know,
find out what I really laughed about?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Humor is a big one. If I
Yeah.
really laughed, I mean, like and what I'm trying to do, this is more, I guess, a therapeutic adventure, but what I'm trying to do for myself in my life is trying to be more myself and more real
Yeah.
and less, just more honest with people, even if it's a difficult conversation. And, even if it hurts somebody to say like why I didn't invite them to something or why I don't want to show up at their party or whatever it is,
Yeah.
thankfully less of that now. But and that also bleeds into business. Is like, why can't I say, this is what I find funny, even if some people wouldn't? This is what I find interesting. I swear a lot, and I get all the time, I get people who are like, why do you swear? Not who are telling me to stop, but who are saying like, it's interesting, you swear a lot. And I just go, well, that's how I talk.
Yeah.
It really is. That's how I talk with my wife. It's how I talk with my parents for some weird reason. It's how I talk with my sister. It's how I talk with my friends. That's how I talk when I'm comfortable and being myself. So when I do that on a webinar or when I do that in a business meeting, I just kind of go, hey, if this is a deal breaker, then this is probably not going to work out anyways. So yeah, how have you overcome that? Well, you said it's a balancing act. So what is the balancing that you have to do? What do you think is most important to keep of yourself, and what have you found that you can maybe, let go of?
Yeah.
Or yeah, I'm interested in this balancing act thing.
So it was funny because when I first started all my social media marketing, and you can go through my Instagram and you can see the change.
Yeah.
3 or 4 years ago, it was like suits, it was corporate skylines out the window.
Uh-huh.
And I want to say about a year and a half ago, I said to my team, I'm like, I hate our social media. It's boring.
Mm.
I don't want to read it.
Yeah.
And if I don't want to read it, who
Nobody
actually
else will.
does?
Yeah.
So we started on this journey of trying to change who we are, um, and just kind of inject a little bit more fun into it. And there's been a few times it's like, ooh, this is risky. Like
Mhm.
in HR world, it's
Yes,
risky.
yes, right.
In the average marketing or copywriter world, it's probably not. But it's actually a lot more fun
Mhm.
to inject that personality because I'll read it. And right now we're going through all of our marketing emails and that sort of thing again. And I said to one of the people I was working with, I was like, when it comes to humor versus substance, I would rather have more humor and less substance, but I
Yeah.
know that's not the purpose of the email marketing. So
Yeah.
let's find a way to balance both. I'd rather just be funny than actually have anything to do with anything.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's just coming into your own, right? And
Yeah.
you probably have the same when you look back, you're like, man, we should have never taken on that client.
Yeah.
Or that was not a great fit for us. And as you get more on in years in your business, you can kind of sniff that out. And
Right.
as you get more business, you have less, you add on the pain and suffering price because it might be a little bit more work than you expected it to be given how the
Mhm.
relationship started off.
Yeah.
And I think you start to see who you jive well with and let's be honest, we're business partners. We're in your business.
Right.
So, if you think people suck and they're just out to get your profit, employees are out just to get your profit, and like, this is not a good fit for us. Yeah, people are crazy. Some of them are. But for the most part, your people are driving your business, and the better the relationship you have with them, the better they're going to be working for you.
Do you
So if that
Yeah, sorry, go
relationship,
ahead.
if
Yeah.
if if I can like sniff out that mismatch of values, like I'll just say no, we can't take it on.
Yeah.
But in the first year, there was no way I was turning down business.
Totally. Well, that's it. It's all about it's like a slow shift from please like me, please validate me, please take me on to like, you know what? I'm going to be a bit more selective and a bit
Yeah.
more true to what I really want to do. And then and it's also just like a peeling back layer by layer of artifice
Yeah.
and of bullshit and of a front. And it's one of the most satisfying processes of my life in my personal work, going to therapy and just working on myself. I was going, no, I'm not just going to agree with that because it's
Yeah.
convenient. I'm actually going to say my opinion, even though it's maybe not so popular or not as cool. Or I'm actually going to admit, oh, and now I've never seen that movie. I've never done that thing. Or like when I was a kid, I used to lie all the time and be like, yeah, I saw that movie. Oh no, I know that movie. I've seen that movie. And I'm like, why
Yeah.
did I do that? It's okay to not. And
Yeah.
so the more that I kind of work on that, the more I find it better, from a business perspective. And then when it comes to taking on new people, hiring new people, and being like, you're going to represent the brand.
Hmm.
What I wonder about now is, does that person have to be perfect and you have to be like, oh my God, they think the same way as me, they jive with me totally? Or as you say, do they just have to like have a complementary skill set, and then you'd be like, you know what, they're going to mess up, there's going to be problems, there's going to be maybe a couple customer complaints or two, but in general, I now have to find people who don't meet 1,000% of my criteria? Like,
I don't think it's neither or.
right.
And I think if we replicated ourselves and hired ourselves, we wouldn't really like them.
Hmm.
I mean, if you
I
had
can
to
barely
marry
stand myself.
yourself,
Yeah.
like if I had to marry myself, there's no way
Oh
that
my
marriage would
God.
survive.
No, 3 days.
Uh, so I think hiring is the same way. It's not an either or.
Yeah.
Even when you make a great job description, you will not find somebody who checks the boxes exactly like you laid them out. We call that the purple squirrely unicorn.
Hmm.
But you will find somebody, and maybe it might take a try. Like I'm going to be honest. The first person I hired was not a great fit.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's incorrect. She was a great fit. She couldn't actually do the work that I was hoping she could do
Right.
because of my bad hiring practices.
Hmm.
I loved talking to her. We had great conversations, and I threw out the interview guide, didn't ask the questions I needed to ask to find
And
out
you're
if she
like,
could
I like this
actually do the
person.
work.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, I've done 1,000 interviews and I screwed that up.
It
So
speaks to the power of likability, which is something I talk about all the time. If you can be likable, it gets you in a lot of doors,
yeah, and she's
even
great.
if you're not right for the
Yeah,
position. Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with her as a person.
Yeah.
She was a great fit for the organization, but it came to this decision where we had a conversation and she's like, I don't actually, this isn't what I do. I don't know
Yeah.
how to do
Yeah. Yeah.
this.
Right.
We're like, oh, and
Yeah.
that was on me. That's not her
Right.
fault.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally on me for, not asking the right questions.
Totally.
So yeah,
Yeah,
like
what's
having that balance,
right.
you're not going to be able to check off all the boxes.
Yeah.
And I think you need to find, when you throw it out there and you start seeing the resumes come in, you're like, oh, they have this skill that I've never considered an asset. One of the, our most recent hire, Jessica, one of the coolest things that she has is she did attendance management for a school board.
Hmm.
Gosh, if that's like the biggest question we get is on attendance management, and that's all she did
Wow.
for like 2 years. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is a skill that I never even considered would be,
Yeah.
what we were looking for.
It's like diversity. It's finding a diverse team and of backgrounds and skill sets and personalities and
Yeah.
opinions and thoughts and all that kind of stuff. And it is so important and so much less interesting than just trying to hire 7 U's. Because that is that common phrase you hear from solopreneurs that is like, if only I could clone myself 10 times, then I'd be making a bajillion, but yeah, it seems like what you're saying, and what I think is really true, is that the more diversity that you can bring in and the more complementary skill sets you can gather around, the better it is. And you
Yeah.
don't have to find people who are exactly like you. This is such an interesting conversation. I know we could go for another hour, but so for people who want
Yeah.
to learn more about you, want to learn more about what you do, any resources you have, where can they find you, and how can they engage with you?
Yeah. So they can find us. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, Essential HR,
At Essential HR, all the
at
things. Yeah.
essentialhr.ca. And they can also check out our website, essentialhr.ca. And if you go to essentialhr.ca/outloud, you'll find a great little download of some of our favorite interview questions.
Specialized link.
So specialized link.
That's
Don't
so
have to
awesome.
Google. No
Yeah.
more doctor Googling your interview questions.
Nice.
Just some of the ones that we love to use that are fairly generic and very indispensable to our
That's
in our
fantastic.
opinion.
Yeah. No, it's really such a useful thing, because it's a question we get all the time, like what should we ask, from job seekers as well, and it's
Yeah.
good for job seekers to see that resource too, also to know what is likely to come. And yeah, it's such amazing stuff that you're doing, and I find that more and more the relinquishing of skill sets to people who are actually good
Yeah.
at it, know what they're doing, and like doing it, is like one of the best things you can learn as a business owner. So I encourage everybody who needs help with HR to reach out to Laura and go to her website, follow her on social media. And Laura, thank you so much for doing this. It's really, really great to talk to you as always.
Thanks so much for having me, Will.
Okay, we'll talk soon.
Bye now.
Bye.